Hi there, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church Stony Stratford, and today we're continuing in Mark's Gospel and Mark chapter 9 verses 33 to 37. Before I was a pastor, I was a builder and decorator, and I used to work with a very experienced decorator some of the time. His name was Neil. And one day Neil and his mates, because of the prestige of the firm, were doing a demonstration of how to decorate at the Science Museum in London. Well, one of his friends was demonstrating how to paper a ceiling, and he was giving a bit of a commentary as he went for those who were watching him. So he'd say something like, now I line up this next piece of paper and butt it to the piece of paper here, and now I take the papering brush and I start to smooth it out. And as he did that, he put the papering brush straight through the paper. Well, Neil and his mates just fell about at their friend's expense. They were cracking up. And, his friend must have felt, so embarrassed. I think that's a bit how Jesus' disciples feel in this passage. They've come to Capernaum, that's very much Jesus' base in the area of Galilee. And Jesus asked them a question. What were they arguing about on the road? Well, they're shamefaced, they keep silent. They're embarrassed, they've been caught out. And so Jesus sits down, which is very much what the rabbis used to do in those days when they used to teach. And he says this, because he knows what they've been arguing about. Verse 35, if anyone wants to be first, he must be last and the servant of all. What was the argument about? We don't know. But we do know that Peter, James and John had this experience of Jesus, which they were not to tell the others about. Maybe a little bit of elitism was creeping in, and that they were perhaps inferring that they were privileged above the others. Well, whatever the case, Jesus is now teaching them. That's not the way it's going to be in my kingdom. And he gives them an example. He gives them a new criteria for greatness. Verse 36, he took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking in his arms, he said to them, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. Children were obviously loved in ancient Israel, but they weren't seen as people of importance. And this is a little child. This is one that Jesus can pick up. And so he's saying this is not the way the world looks at greatness. The world looks at greatness in terms of privilege, in terms of sort of bowing your head and respect. Not Jesus' criteria for greatness. The one who's going to be great has to serve, and that's the key thing. What is the point Jesus is making? Well, how do we welcome him? Are we going to look and sort of work out how we treat people by their status in the world? Are we going to be servants of Christ and welcome anyone? You see, Christ came to serve. It says in the book of Mark, this gospel we're looking at, that he came to serve and lay down his life to be a ransom for many. And the magnitude of that is found in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah. It says this is Isaiah 53 verses 4 and 5. Surely he took our infirmities and was carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities, and the punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. It's interesting that phrase, took up. This is Christ acting as a servant, taking everything, our rebellion against God and all those things that would separate us from God, and dealing with them. Well, what do we see? Here's how it plays out. We see again his criteria for greatness. Verse 12 of Isaiah 53, therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong. Because he poured out his life unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors, that's sinners, people who have done wrong, people who rebelled against God. For he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgression. Because of what Christ has done, he will be exalted to the highest place. We know that in Philippians 2. This is Jesus' criteria for greatness. The world may have other ideas, but Christ came to serve and to be the payment for our rebellion and wrongdoing against God, which the Bible calls sin. Thank you for listening.